Let's start with something most people don't want to admit. Power doesn't disappear because you aren't good enough. It disappears because people get used to you. The moment your presence becomes normal, your value starts dropping. Not because you changed, but because the human mind is brutal like that. Familiarity turns miracles into background noise, and the world doesn't respect background noise. Machiavelli understood this at a level most people never reach. He watched courts, princes, nobles, enemies, allies. He watched what made men feared and what made them irrelevant. And one of the most ruthless truths he saw was simple. What is common is cheap. What is rare becomes important. And what is rare for long enough becomes feared. Think about it. Gold doesn't have value because it's magical. It has value because it's hard to get. The difficulty creates desire. The scarcity creates obsession. And people work the same way. If you're always available, always reachable, always responding, always showing up, people unconsciously label you as easy to access. And in their minds, easy to access becomes easy to replace. That's why the kings of old didn't sit among the crowd like they were just another face. They didn't move like regular men. They didn't speak like regular men. They didn't give everyone their attention like it was free. They appeared rarely like an eclipse. And that rarity did something terrifying to the people around them. When someone shows up all the time, you don't imagine anything about them. You already know them. You already get them. There's no mystery, no tension, no edge. But when someone is hard to reach, when someone doesn't show up on demand, your mind fills in the blanks. You start wondering, where are they? What are they doing? Who are they with? What do they know that I don't? And here's the key. Imagination is always more dangerous than reality. Reality has limits. Reality can be measured. Reality can be understood. But imagination, it multiplies. People will imagine you're more powerful than you are, more connected than you are, more dangerous than you are. They'll build a myth around you using nothing but silence and absence, and that myth starts working for you. So let me say this clearly, because most people hear the word scarcity, and they think it means weakness. Scarcity is not weakness. Scarcity is strategy. It's not hiding because you're insecure. It's controlling access because you understand psychology. Because the truth is, the more you reveal, the less they value. The more you explain, the more they relax. The more you chase, the more you shrink. But when you limit access to yourself, you create hunger. When you withdraw a little, people chase. When you control your presence, your absence becomes a weapon. And yes, this is uncomfortable for most people, because modern life trains you to do the opposite. We're taught to be responsive, to be available, to be nice, to answer fast, to prove we care, to show up constantly so nobody forgets us. But that constant availability doesn't make people respect you. It makes you predictable, and predictability is death to power. Because when someone can map your every move, they stop fearing you. And when they stop fearing you, they stop respecting you. And when they stop respecting you, they start using you. That's why Machiavelli's formula sounds cold, but it works. Appear less. Demand more. And watch the world treat you like a prize instead of a pawn. Let's get even more direct. Stop trying to be liked. Because chasing likability makes you easy to control. When you constantly try to be understood, people stop trying to understand you. They stop leaning in. They stop paying attention. They stop making effort. But when you're scarce, your presence has weight. If you're always available, you're worth nothing in the social marketplace. If you're scarce, you become untouchable. And that's when the real fear begins. Not fear like panic. Fear like, if I lose access to this person, I lose something valuable. Because scarcity doesn't just raise your value, it changes how people behave around you. When mastered, scarcity creates an aura. And I don't mean some mystical nonsense. I mean a real psychological effect, an invisible pressure that makes people tread carefully around you. Here's what happens when someone can't easily reach you. They stop taking you for granted. And when they can't predict you, they start obsessing over you. And when they can't control you, they start respecting you, even fearing you. This is practical psychology. Machiavelli saw it in Renaissance courts. The ruler who limited his appearances became the axis around which everything rotated. Nobles would whisper, speculate, compete, fight for proximity. Not because the ruler begged for attention, because the ruler didn't need attention. He became the center by refusing to be common. And the most powerful part is this: the prince barely had to lift a finger. His scarcity did the work for him. So if you're listening to me right now and thinking, okay, but how does this apply to my life? It applies everywhere. Your work, your friendships, your relationships, your social circle, your status, your influence. The person who's always free for lunch gets overlooked. The friend who always says yes gets taken for granted. The lover who is constantly available loses their edge. Human nature is cruel, but it's consistent. We do not respect what we can easily have. But when something is hard to obtain, we instinctively assume it must be valuable. We assume it must be important. We assume it must be worth chasing. So the first lesson is simple, but merciless. To seem powerful, you must become scarce, not by vanishing forever, not by acting arrogant, not by playing childish games, by appearing on your own terms, like a sovereign entering the throne room when it benefits him. Because if people expect you to always answer, you're a servant. If they have to wait for your word, you're a master. Now, here's the part that separates amateurs from real strategists. Scarcity isn't passive. It's not, I'm too shy to respond. It's, I choose when I respond. It's a controlled silence that forces the world to make the first move. And when you do speak, every word carries weight. When you do appear, every glance feels meaningful. Because they don't get you whenever they want. And when they don't get you whenever they want, they start valuing every moment they do get. But there's a rule you have to follow, or the whole thing collapses. Never explain why you're unavailable. Never justify your silence. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Let them chase. Because the more you explain yourself, the more you train people to believe you owe them access. And the moment they believe you owe them access, your power is already leaking. So, in this first part, I want you to sit with one idea. Your presence is a resource. And if you hand it out like water, you will be treated like water, useful but ordinary. But if you ration it, if you control it, if you make it something people have to earn, you don't just protect your value. You start building a presence people can feel before you say a single word. Now here's where scarcity becomes truly dangerous. Not just impressive, not just attractive, dangerous. Because once people can't easily reach you, something shifts inside their mind. They stop asking, what do I want from this person? And start asking, where do I stand with them? That uncertainty is powerful. Machiavelli understood this better than most rulers of his time. He saw how men behaved when they were unsure of their position, when they didn't know whether they were favored or forgotten, when access was unclear. They didn't relax. They leaned in. They competed. They worked harder. They obsessed. And that's the first thing you need to understand about scarcity. It creates pressure without you doing anything. You don't have to threaten. You don't have to demand. You don't have to explain. Your absence does the work. When someone isn't sure where they stand with you, they start trying to earn clarity. And the easiest way for them to do that is to move closer to you. This is why scarcity doesn't just protect your value, it reshapes behavior. People stop treating you casually. They choose their words more carefully. They read into your tone. They analyze your timing. They replay your reactions. You stop being just a person in their mind. You become a presence, and presence is power. But there's something most people get wrong here. They think scarcity means being cold for no reason, acting distant without intention, vanishing completely and hoping people magically care. That's not strategy. That's negligence. Real scarcity is controlled. It's visible enough to be felt, but rare enough to be missed. Machiavelli warned about this balance. If you disappear too long, people don't chase, they forget. If you appear too often, people don't respect you, become familiar. True authority lives in the tension between closeness and distance. Not too close, not too far. That tension keeps people alert. Think about the ruler Machiavelli described in Renaissance courts. The one who limited appearances. The one who didn't explain delays. The one who didn't rush decisions. Nobles would whisper, "Has he lost faith in me? Did I offend him? Who has his ear now?" And while they were whispering, competing, maneuvering, the ruler did nothing. His scarcity did everything. That's the psychological trap. People interpret silence as intention. If you don't answer, they assume you're choosing not to. If you don't appear, they assume you're doing something important. If you delay, they assume it's deliberate. And that assumption alone elevates you. But here's the warning Machiavelli gave, and this is critical. Scarcity can intoxicate you. When people start chasing you, when they start projecting power onto you, when they start treating you like you're untouchable, it's easy to believe your own myth, to think that scarcity alone makes you powerful. It doesn't. Scarcity amplifies what's already there. If you're scarce but weak, people will eventually see through it. If you're scarce but empty, the illusion collapses. If you're scarce and incompetent, the myth dies the moment you're tested. That's why Machiavelli said power built on perception still requires real strength behind it. Scarcity buys you attention. Strength keeps it. And when you combine the two, your legend becomes unshakable. This is where most people fail. They try to copy the surface behavior, being distant, being silent, being unavailable without developing the substance underneath. And when pressure comes, they fold. Real scarcity is supported by discipline. You don't explain because you don't need approval. You don't chase because you have options. You don't rush because you're not desperate. And people feel that even if they can't articulate it. Now let's talk about something uncomfortable. Modern life teaches you to destroy your own power. We're trained to respond instantly, to be constantly connected, to always be on. But constant responsiveness signals something dangerous. It signals that your time is not valuable. When you answer every message immediately, people assume you have nothing better to do. When you attend every event, people assume your presence isn't special. When you always say yes, people assume you have no leverage. And leverage is everything. Machiavelli observed princes who used absence deliberately. They would disappear from court for weeks. They would delay decisions. They would restrict access so tightly that a single audience felt like a privilege. Even their enemies feared being excluded. Because exclusion creates anxiety, and anxiety creates obedience. Scarcity doesn't just breed desire, it breeds dependence. When people don't know if they can access you, they start adjusting themselves to you. They align their behavior to avoid losing you. They compete for your approval. And here's the cruel truth of human nature. People become emotionally invested in what they have to work for. The more effort they put in, the more valuable you become in their mind. That's why the colleague who's always free gets overlooked. Why the friend who always agrees gets ignored. Why the partner who's endlessly available gets taken for granted. Ease kills value. Difficulty creates meaning. So Machiavelli's second lesson is this: never make your access predictable. Predictability makes you safe. Safety makes you ignorable. When people can't predict when they'll hear from you, when they'll see you, or how much access they'll get, they pay attention. They stay alert. They stay engaged. And this isn't about manipulation in the childish sense. It's about refusing to collapse your value by overexposure. You don't owe the world constant access. You don't owe explanations for your silence. You don't owe immediate responses. And the moment you stop acting like you do, the power dynamic shifts. But let's go deeper. Scarcity doesn't just affect how others treat you. It affects how they talk about you. When you're always around, people speak casually about you. They joke. They criticize. They get comfortable. When you're scarce, people speculate. Speculation elevates status. They start saying things like, "He's busy with something big. She doesn't need this. He's selective about who he deals with. She doesn't give her time away." Your absence creates a vacuum, and power always flows toward a vacuum. People fill that space with imagination, and imagination exaggerates. It makes you larger than life. This is why scarcity is dangerous. Because once people start projecting power onto you, they begin guarding your reputation for you. They defend you in rooms you're not even in. They silence critics. They justify your behavior. Not because they're loyal, because they're afraid of losing access. And that's when the balance shifts completely. You're no longer chasing approval. Others are chasing proximity. But again, this only works if you maintain balance. Disappear too much, and you're forgotten. Appear too often, and you're diluted. The goal is controlled absence. Enough presence to remind people you exist. Enough distance to make them crave you. That tension is where authority lives. And in the next part, I'm going to break down exactly how to weaponize this in real life, step by step, without becoming arrogant, antisocial, or fake. Because scarcity isn't about hiding. It's about appearing on your own terms. And when you master that, people start moving toward you without you ever taking a step. Now we get practical. Because scarcity without structure is just distance. And distance without intention does nothing. Machiavelli never spoke in abstractions. He gave formulas, patterns, levers. And the same logic applies here. If scarcity is going to work for you, it must be deliberate. So think of this as a system, not a personality change. You are not becoming cold. You are not becoming arrogant. You are becoming selective. And selectivity is power. Let's start with the first step. Step 1. Withdraw from the crowd deliberately. This doesn't mean disappearing from the world. It means refusing to be constantly visible. You stop attending everything. Stop responding to everything. Stop showing up just because you can. Visibility should serve you, not drain you. When you are always present, people stop noticing you. When you pull back slightly, people start asking questions. Why isn't he here? Why hasn't she responded yet? Did something change? Those questions create curiosity. Curiosity creates attention, and attention is the raw material of power. Your silence forces people to wonder what you're doing, who you're meeting, what priorities have replaced them. That uncertainty builds pressure, not because you threatened anyone, but because you stopped feeding them constant access. Step 2. Control access to yourself. This is where most people collapse. They want to feel powerful, but they still let everyone walk through the door. They answer everyone. They explain themselves to everyone. They make themselves emotionally and mentally available to anyone who asks. That destroys authority. A king does not open his gates for everyone, not because he hates the people, but because access is power. You must decide who gets access to your time, your energy, your attention. And here's the key. You don't announce this decision, you enforce it silently. You don't say, "I'm busy now." You simply become unavailable. You don't justify your schedule, you live by it. When access is limited, people treat it like a privilege. They approach carefully. They speak with intention. They respect boundaries they were never explicitly told about. Because boundaries that are enforced silently are stronger than boundaries that are explained. Step 3. Appear selectively and with purpose. When you do reappear, it must feel intentional, not random, not accidental, not desperate. If you're scarce, even a small gesture carries weight. A single message, a short meeting, a brief comment. People listen more closely because they don't hear from you often. That's why leaders who speak less are quoted more. When you talk too much, people skim. When you speak rarely, people analyze. So when you show up decisively. Say what matters, do what matters, then withdraw again. This rhythm trains people to associate your presence with importance. Step 4. Turn absence into intrigue, not neglect. This is critical. Scarcity is not vanishing completely. If you disappear too long without leaving any trace, people move on. The goal is not abandonment. It's tension. You give just enough to maintain attention, but not enough to satisfy it. Think of it like rationing. You want people slightly hungry, not full, not starving. When they miss you, they value you more. When they wonder about you, they respect you more. This keeps people alert and engaged without resentment. Step 5. Use scarcity to shape perception. Here's where scarcity becomes truly strategic. When you're always around, people see everything: your flaws, your doubts, your mistakes. Overexposure strips mystique. But when you're rarely around, people only see what you allow them to see. You control the image. You project confidence. You project authority. You project calm. And because they don't have constant access to contradict that image, they believe it. This is how rulers controlled reputation without propaganda. Presence was limited. Image was curated. Now, Machiavelli saw this clearly in Renaissance courts. Rulers appeared only when decisions had to be made. Ambassadors waited weeks, sometimes months, for a single audience. That delay alone communicated dominance. It said, "I decide when you see me, not you." And the same formula works today. In business, the person whose time is valuable is treated with respect. In relationships, the one who is pursued holds the leverage. In social circles, the one who is not always present becomes interesting. Scarcity shifts the power dynamic. Others must adjust to you, to your timing, to your availability, to your rules. They stop expecting access and start competing for it. And once people compete for your attention, the game is already over. But scarcity alone doesn't turn value into power. To do that, you must make people move toward you. And Machiavelli was ruthless about this part. The powerful do not pursue, they attract. A prince who chases his subjects loses authority. A prince who forces his subjects to chase him becomes a ruler in truth. So how do you make people pursue you willingly? You use delay as a weapon. When someone wants your time, don't give it immediately. Delay doesn't weaken you. It weakens them. Waiting creates imbalance. Imbalance creates urgency. When people wait, They wonder if they've lost favor. That doubt eats at them. They chase harder to restore equilibrium. Next, you create controlled unpredictability. Predictability makes you dismissible. If people can always guess your behavior, they stop paying attention. But if your availability is slightly unpredictable, without being chaotic, people stay alert. They watch more closely. They listen more carefully. They invest more emotionally. Then you reward selectively. This is non-negotiable. If you reward everyone equally, your favor becomes worthless. But if you reward only a few, others fight to be next. Access becomes status. And finally, you use silence to create hunger. You don't always respond. You don't always explain. You don't always react. A lack of words forces projection. People imagine what you're thinking. They imagine approval, disapproval, intention, and imagination does the work for you. But remember this, every appearance now matters. If you've been scarce, you cannot afford to waste your presence. When you speak, speak with clarity. When you act, act with purpose. People magnify your behavior because they rarely see it. Your presence becomes addictive, not because you manipulate, but because you don't dilute. And in the next part, we'll confront the dark side of this strategy. Because scarcity doesn't just change how others see you. It changes how they attach to you and how they bind themselves to you. That's where the real danger begins. This is where scarcity stops being a tactic and becomes a force. Up to now, we've talked about how scarcity raises value, creates pressure, and shifts behavior. But Machiavelli saw something deeper, something most people never notice until it's already happening. Scarcity doesn't just make people want you, it makes them attached to you. And attachment changes everything. When people are unsure of where they stand with you, they don't pull away. They move closer. They invest emotionally, mentally, socially. They start monitoring themselves. They adjust their behavior. They become careful. Why? Because uncertainty is unbearable to the human mind. When people don't know if they've pleased you, they work harder. When they don't know if they've lost you, they chase. When they fear exclusion, they obey. Machiavelli understood that people are slaves to their own uncertainty. This is why he warned rulers never to chase. The moment you pursue someone, you reverse the power dynamic. You signal need, and need destroys authority. Power does not come from convincing people to follow you. It comes from making people afraid to lose you. Look at rulers, CEOs, generals, anyone who commands loyalty. They do not hand out their time freely. Their approval is measured. Their disapproval is silent but terrifying. People go to extreme lengths just to stay in their good graces. And this isn't cruelty. It's psychology. When people chase you, they invest in you. And the more they invest, the more they fear losing you. That fear binds them. Scarcity doesn't just raise your value. It creates dependence. When someone needs you more than you need them, the entire balance shifts. You stop proving yourself. They start proving themselves to you. This is the moment power flips direction, and it shows up everywhere. In business, the person who doesn't sell himself becomes the one others want to partner with. In relationships, the one who doesn't plead becomes the one pursued. In social circles, the one who isn't always present becomes the one people talk about. But here's the danger Machiavelli warned about. When people become dependent on you, they don't just desire you, they start protecting you. They defend your reputation in rooms you're not in. They justify your absence. They silence critics on your behalf. Not because they're noble, because their access to you has become part of their identity. Losing you would mean losing status, losing meaning, losing position. So they guard you. Scarcity turns followers into gatekeepers. But this is where things get dangerous for you. Because when people start projecting power onto you, It's tempting to believe the illusion is enough. To think that silence alone makes you strong. That distance alone makes you untouchable. That mystique alone will protect you. It won't. Machiavelli was very clear about this. If you are scarce but empty, people will eventually see through you. If you are scarce but weak, the pressure will expose you. If you are scarce without substance, the myth collapses the moment you're tested. Scarcity magnifies everything. Your strengths become legendary. Your weaknesses become catastrophic. That's why real scarcity requires discipline. You must be strong enough to back it up, skilled enough, competent enough, prepared enough. Because scarcity buys you time and attention, but reality always arrives. This is why Machiavelli emphasized balance. Be visible enough to remind people you exist. Be rare enough that they crave your presence. Be approachable enough to avoid hatred. Be distant enough to avoid contempt. Too much distance creates resentment. Too much closeness creates familiarity. And familiarity breeds contempt. This is one of Machiavelli's harshest observations. The more people see you, the less they fear you. The more they can reach you, the less they respect you. Availability breeds equality, and equality is poison to power. A prince who mingles too freely with his subjects stops feeling like a prince. A commander who spends too much time with his soldiers becomes a friend, not a leader. A man who always answers the phone trains others to believe his time belongs to them. You become part of their routine, not an authority, not an enigma. Just there. And when you're just there, your absence means nothing. Your return brings no excitement. Your words carry no weight. Even your generosity loses value because it's expected. That's the tragedy of overexposure. It feels generous, but it erodes authority. And worse, constant availability exposes your weaknesses. When people see you too often, they notice the cracks, your doubts, your mistakes, your hesitation, your humanity. Mystique vanishes. What was once impressive becomes ordinary. What was once respected becomes disappointing. Machiavelli knew that power depends on perception as much as reality. A leader who appears sparingly controls his image. A leader who is always present loses control of how others see him, and this law applies far beyond politics. In business, the entrepreneur who attends every meeting is treated like an employee. The executive who answers every email instantly is assumed to have nothing better to do. In relationships, the person who is endlessly available is taken for granted. What is abundant is ignored. What is rare is pursued. This is why scarcity is not arrogance. It's restraint. It's the discipline to resist the urge to over-explain, over-give, over-appear. The weak beg to be seen. The strong force the world to notice their absence. But remember, this scarcity has a cost. You must be comfortable with silence, comfortable with being misunderstood, comfortable with not being liked by everyone. Because the moment you start chasing validation, the power collapses. And in the final part, we'll bring everything together. We'll talk about how scarcity becomes an identity, not a tactic, and how, when done correctly, power stops being something you chase and starts chasing you. At this point, you should see something clearly. Scarcity is not a trick. It's not a phase. It's not something you turn on and off to manipulate people. Scarcity is an identity. The moment you stop throwing yourself at every opportunity, every request, every person, your value begins to rise automatically. Not because you demanded it, but because you stopped leaking it. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. He saw that the world does not reward desperation. It rewards restraint. It rewards rarity. Most people broadcast everything. Their thoughts, their plans, their emotions, their availability. They flood the world with their presence and then wonder why no one takes them seriously. Scarcity flips that completely. When your presence is controlled, when your time is disciplined, when your words are measured, people notice. They notice when you speak. They notice when you disappear. And they notice when you choose to return. And that choice, that sense that you are acting on your own terms, is what creates authority. Because scarcity does something subtle but profound. It makes others depend on you. When people need you more than you need them, the balance shifts. You stop proving yourself. They start proving themselves to you. You no longer run after power. Power runs after you. This is why true scarcity does more than protect your value. It creates an aura. People begin imagining you as larger than life. When you're silent, they assume you're planning something important. When you're distant, they fear losing your favor. When you speak, they analyze every word. In their minds, you stop being just a person. You become a presence, and presence is dangerous. Your silence becomes deafening. Your absence feels heavy. Your approval becomes rare and therefore priceless. People begin guarding your reputation for you. They defend your name in rooms you're not even in, not out of loyalty, but out of fear of losing access. But never forget this. This is not magic. It's discipline. Anyone can flood the world with attention. Few can hold it back. Scarcity demands restraint. It requires resisting the urge to over-explain, over-give, over-appear. It means letting go of the need to be understood by everyone. The weak beg to be seen. The strong let absence speak. And yes, scarcity has a price. You must be strong enough to back it up. If you're scarce but empty, people will see through you. If you're scarce but unskilled, pressure will expose you. But if you're scarce and strong, if your competence, influence, and value are real, then your legend grows every time you say nothing. This is Machiavelli's formula. It isn't polite. It isn't fair. But it works. It works in courts, in corporations, in relationships, in social hierarchies, because human nature has not changed. People instinctively value what is rare. That's why we worship gold, even though most of its uses were discovered long after it became precious. It wasn't useful first. It was scarce first. Apply the same principle to yourself. When you are everywhere, your value collapses. When you ration your presence like a king opening his gates only to the worthy, people suddenly see you as priceless. Scarcity creates tension. When people can't reach you on demand, they wonder what you're doing, who you're meeting, what plans you're hiding. Their imagination magnifies your power. A ruler who hides his movements seems omnipotent. A person who doesn't answer every call seems important, untouchable. Modern life teaches the opposite, to always be available. But constant availability makes you predictable, and predictability kills power. When people can map your every move, they stop fearing you. And when fear disappears, so does respect. Machiavelli studied rulers who used absence as a weapon. They delayed decisions, restricted access, forced others to wait. Even those who hated them feared being excluded. Scarcity breeds desire, but more importantly, it breeds dependence. People chase what retreats. They ignore what approaches. So stop broadcasting your every thought. Stop explaining your every move. Stop handing your presence to people who haven't earned it. Become the one others pursue, the one they can't easily reach, the one they whisper about when you're gone. Because power has two forms, the kind people can measure, and the kind they can only feel. Scarcity builds the second kind. It's not about what you say. It's not about what you show. It's about what people believe you could do but don't. When you deliberately limit your presence, people assume hidden depths, greater plans, stronger allies, options they can't see. Their fear of being left out does more for your reputation than any speech ever could. This is where scarcity becomes truly dangerous. It turns speculation into loyalty, anxiety into obedience, silence into authority. Power never comes from chasing people. It comes from making people chase you. So remember this: if people expect you to always answer, you are a servant. If they wait for your word, you are a master. Scarcity is not passive. It is deliberate. It is controlled. Appear less. Speak less. Offer less. Make your presence something people notice, not something they expect. When you vanish, they should feel it like oxygen leaving the room. When you return, it should feel like a privilege. The world does not reward the desperate. It rewards the rare. Be scarce. Be wanted, be feared. And when you walk into a room, let people feel how rare you are long before you say a single word. Power is not taken by force. It is drawn toward those who no longer chase it. Scarcity is the discipline of restraint in a world addicted to noise, speed, and constant exposure. While most people exhaust themselves trying to be seen, heard, and validated, true power grows quietly in those who know when to step back. When you stop flooding the world with your presence, your absence begins to speak for you. Machiavelli understood that authority is not built by constant action, but by control. Control of time, control of access, control of visibility. When people cannot reach you whenever they want, they start valuing every moment they do. When they cannot predict you, they pay closer attention. And when they realize they cannot easily replace you, they begin to protect you. Scarcity is not arrogance, and it is not cruelty. It is discipline. It is the ability to say no without explanation, to delay without guilt, and to remain silent without fear of being forgotten. Most people cannot tolerate this. They rush to respond, rush to please, rush to prove their worth. In doing so, they give away the very power they seek. But scarcity is not an illusion. It does not create strength where none exists. It only amplifies what is already there. If you are empty, silence will expose you. If you are weak, distance will reveal it. But if you are skilled, capable, and grounded, scarcity turns that inner strength into an aura people can feel without understanding why. This is why restraint has always separated rulers from servants, leaders from followers, and figures of authority from those who are merely present. The world does not revolve around those who are always available. It revolves around those whose presence feels earned. So stop over-explaining. Stop over-giving. Stop placing your time and attention in the hands of anyone who asks. Choose when you appear. Choose when you speak. Choose who gets access to you, because power does not belong to the loud, the desperate, or the endlessly accessible. It belongs to those who are rare enough to be missed, strong enough to stand alone, and disciplined enough to let the world come to them.